afternoon. My name is Martin Estrada. I'm a United States Attorney. I'm joined here by our partners in law enforcement, FBI, ATF, and U.S. Coast Guard. 34 innocent people died because of this defendant, Nehl Boylan. Because of this defendant's actions, 34 brave people, wonderful people, husbands and wives, sons and daughters, cousins, friends, grandchildren are not with us here anymore. And the people they left behind, the families, their loved ones, will have to live with that pain for the rest of their lives. I want to be very clear that what happened here in this incident was not an accident. This was a criminal act. If this defendant had not failed to take basic security measures, those victims would still be with us here today, and all these families behind me would not have to suffer the grief that they have been going through. This defendant could have done many things to avoid this tragedy. If this defendant had only trained and drilled his crew on the firefighting equipment that was on the ship, powerful firefighting equipment, including hoses, including pumps, with a limitless supply of water. If he had trained them to use that equipment, this tragedy could have been avoided. If he had had a night patrol of basic measure, have someone awake at night to catch if something went wrong, that person could have caught this fire, tried to stop it, tried to warn the victims, and this tragedy wouldn't have occurred. And this ship had an intercom system. If this defendant had used that intercom system to warn the victims on that ship, to tell them that he was going to abandon them, they would have had a fighting chance to survive. But this defendant failed to do any of those things, and that's why we're here today.
How do you feel about what the judge decided? 4 years behind bars, 3 years supervised release. I know that's not what you wanted. How do you feel about it?
This defendant never accepted responsibility for his actions, but he was convicted. Thankfully, a jury convicted him for his crimes, and today he's been sentenced to 4 years. And certainly, 4 years was not what we wanted. We wanted 10 years. We thought the appropriate sentence was 10 years in this case. But the sentence is determined by the judge. We respect that process. The judge determines the sentence. But certainly we thought 10 years was appropriate here. But let me say this, and this is important. The conviction and sentence here are important, but we recognize no conviction and no sentence can bring back these victims. And no conviction or sentence can alleviate the tremendous pain that these families have gone through and will continue to go through for the rest of their lives. But the conviction does matter because it shows there is accountability. It shows that for those who have an obligation to keep people safe, when they fail in that obligation, there will be consequences. And another important thing about this case, I want to recognize and acknowledge the strength of the victims' families and loved ones who are behind them. It took incredible courage to go up there and speak to the court. It took incredible patience to sit through this process. The legal system takes time, and they were patient throughout this process. And I'm grateful for their courage, for the faith they showed in my office to bring them justice. I also want to acknowledge the trial team in this matter, the Assistant United States Attorneys who worked so tirelessly on this case. They are also standing behind me. Those are Assistant United States Attorneys Mark Williams, Brian Fairstein, Matt O'Brien. Also, I want to acknowledge Alex Robbins, and I want to acknowledge Juan Rodriguez for his important work in this case. And finally, I want to acknowledge the various agencies that worked on this case, the FBI, the ATF, the Coast Guard, as well as the Ventura Fire Department and the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office.
Criminal charge against anybody else in connection with this
One of the
fire?
family members of the victim step up?
We've achieved justice in this case. We believe we've achieved justice for the victims in this case. Certainly, as I mentioned, we believe a 10-year sentence is appropriate. We respect the process, we respect the legal process, and believe the conviction here does matter.
deterrence factor was one thing that was mentioned in the court numerous times by the prosecutors. Do you think this sentence sends that message to the diving industry, to, if you will, the maritime industry, on how you treat passengers?
I think the conviction and sentence in this case show that deterrent effect. We invested significant resources. We have 4 AUSAs working on this case to bring this person to justice. This is a statute that's rarely used. We used it in this case. We were flexible, we were nimble. We had this defendant convicted, and now he's going to serve 4 years in prison. I'll now turn it over to my counterparts in the FBI.
Good afternoon. My name is Sean Hayward. I'm an assistant special agent in charge of the FBI here in the criminal division here in LA. For me, I still remember September 2nd, getting the phone call and the shock that we felt, and soon after sending our folks and our specialty teams to work with the other agencies so we could figure out how this happened and what we could do about it. This case to us is about accountability for the tragic loss of 34 people and Mr. Boylan's failure to live up to the position as captain and title in which he was entrusted to safeguard those under his command. A captain ensures that his crew is trained and he carries out every life-saving measure possible, but that did not happen. The fate of the victims of the conception might have been different were it not for the negligence of the defendant. While today's sentencing cannot bring these 34 souls back to their families, I hope this measure of justice will aid them in their continuing healing process, and that this tragedy will serve as a cautionary example to others who command our vessels. I'd like to acknowledge the years of hard work that went into this investigation. This was a difficult crime scene, and the evidence presented a variety of technical challenges. I'd like to say thank you to our investigators at the Coast Guard, Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department, the ATF, and the FBI, including our FBI USER, our underwater diving team, and to the prosecutors who stayed the course over these almost 5 years of this investigation. I know this case affected many of them deeply. Thank you. I'd like to introduce the U.S. Coast Guard Investigative Service, SAC, Randy Thompson.
One more time, your name, sir?
My name is Sean Hayward.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Special Agent in Charge Randy Thompson with the Coast Guard Investigative Service in the Pacific region. I would like to thank all of our law enforcement partners and the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office for all the support and help in getting this case brought to a successful conclusion. But most of all, I'd like to acknowledge the victims and their families in this terrible tragedy. Nothing that we've done could I hope bring back any solace to what the loss that they've had. And it's just a terrible tragedy. And I hope that the maritime industry takes significant notes from what has happened here today and makes changes that need to happen to make the industry safer for everyone. Thank you.
Is he going to still hold his captain's license after he serves his sentence?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jose Pedro. I'm the Acting Assistant Special Agent in charge here in Los Angeles. I want to thank everybody of the partners here, U.S. Attorney's Office, FBI, Coast Guard, and everybody who worked this case. But I want to thank the ATF National Response Team who responded within 24 hours of this tragedy and were on scene working hand in hand with our partners trying to resolve this tragedy. Their work didn't stop here. They worked for over 2.5 years back in Maryland in our research lab, where they actually constructed a model of the ship out there, and they did over 100 tests. And I hope at the end that the family can get some of the answers they deserve. Again, I mean, there's no words to quell their pain, but I just hope that we all learn from this tragedy and we'll never see anything like this happen again. Thank you.
We have time for just a few more questions, and then we'll open the floor to the families if they want to talk.
Any questions?
Can you talk about supervised release and what that involves? I don't know if you got that.
Sure. So when the defendant is under supervised release, the probation office will keep them under supervision. If they commit other illegal acts or violate the conditions of their supervised release, then they can be brought back before the court and potentially receive more time in prison.
Does that mean an ankle monitor? Like between now and his hearing in July, what is his life like? Is he completely free?
So during the time now, he's under what's known as pretrial supervision. So there is an office that supervises his actions and makes sure he's not violating any terms. I don't know the exact terms off the top of my head, but he is under supervision now and certainly will be after he serves his prison sentence. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay. I think we're done.
Anybody from the family?
Yeah. So now some of the victims will come up to speak.
Journey's over.
Oh,
I'm so sorry. I'm Kathleen.
Say your first and last name.
Kathleen McElvain.
Can you spell it?
This is Kathleen McElvain. McIlvain. And my husband is Clark. Sorry. We're very relieved that this is finally over, but we really felt like our son's life and those of the others was certainly worth more than 1 month and 4 days. That's basically what Boylan got, 48 months. I so appreciate everything the prosecution did. They worked very hard. The FBI was wonderful. Everyone, the ATF, everyone just supported us this whole journey, and I want to thank them all for everything they did too. Our lives are changed forever. I don't really know how to go forward, but we'll give it a shot for trial.
Our hope that the sentence would perform a function of general deterrence. I'm not sure that a young captain, say a 30-year-old captain, would look at 4 years as being enough to deter him if he was even caught. I mean, the reason this happened is captains, and plenty of captains out there still, just didn't believe it was a regulation worth following, that it would never turn into the tragedy it did.
Thank you.
What is your name, sir?
Clark McElvain?
Can you tell us your son's name?
Charlie McElvain. Charles McElvain. Just his daughter-in-law.
Come on up here.